There was a quiet dignity in mornings that began with the sound of glass. A soft clink on the front step, a gentle rattle of a wire carrier, and then silence again, as a neighborhood rested beneath a cool gray sky turning slowly to pearl. In the 1950s, the day often started before anyone spoke a word. Curtains held the first hint of sunlight, kitchens still smelled faintly of last night's coffee, and a thin chill lingered on tile floors. Out on the street, a milk truck hummed low, steady, and reliable, its tires pressing gently across damp pavement. The driver moved carefully, almost ceremonially, placing bottles upright so they would not tip, pausing only to wipe one if dew gathered on the frosted glass. Those bottles felt reassuring, sturdy, and familiar. Heavy glass with a rounded shoulder. A paper cap neatly pressed on top, marked in red or blue. Cold to the touch. Sometimes a little cream settled at the top, a golden layer that felt like a small reward for being awake early enough to notice. Children remembered shaking it, or sometimes scooping it, thinking it was the richest treat the morning could offer. Inside the kitchen, you could hear slippers shuffle and a kettle whistle soft and steady. Bread waited to be toasted, butter ready to soften on warm slices. Breakfast was not rushed. Even if chores waited, even if the day would be full, mornings asked people to move slowly. A family might gather in near silence, only the radio crackling quietly in the background, a familiar voice reading weather and local notes. There was a rhythm that felt earned and unhurried, a sense that time, like the milk, arrived fresh each morning, right to your doorstep. And there was trust woven into every delivery. The idea that someone knew your house, your routine, your order. A milkman might nod at a neighbor, tip his cap, and continue on, never disturbing anyone more than necessary. People paid weekly, often in cash left in small envelopes by the door. It worked because the world felt close enough to hold. A block was not just a place but a community, where faces were known and routines respected. Looking back, it is remarkable how quiet those moments were. No screens glowing, no phones buzzing, just cool air, the smell of grass, and the promise of a simple breakfast. The sound of a milk truck easing down the lane felt like the day arriving gently, not demanding attention but offering comfort. And as we follow that simple bottle into the morning, we will travel through the habits, values, and quiet joys that defined a time when life felt steady at sunrise, and a small glass bottle on the doorstep meant the world had kept its promise once again. By the middle of the 20th century, milk delivery had become a quiet backbone of daily life. It was not glamorous, and it was not meant to be. It was dependable, local, and human. In towns and suburbs across America, Canada, the United Kingdom, and Australia, milk arrived before most alarms rang, guided by lantern light, early street lamps, or the first glow of sunrise. Delivery men worked routes that could stretch 20, 30, sometimes 40 stops before breakfast was served in their own homes. In the United States, many trucks bore the names of small dairies like Borden's or regional co-ops, each with familiar lettering that neighbors could recognize from a distance. In Canada, silver-topped bottles from companies like Dairyland rested on wooden porches. In the United Kingdom, the gentle whir of electric milk floats became a sound of morning peace, easing through quiet lanes with soft wheels and no rush to disturb anyone still sleeping. And in Australia, dairy cooperatives in coastal towns and farming regions supported routes where drivers might greet customers by name before continuing along dusty or rain-slicked roads. Every detail of the system came from necessity and tradition. Glass bottles could be returned, washed, and reused. Milk was pasteurized for safety, and in many households it sat in insulated porch boxes to keep it cool. A family might order 1 quart during the week and 2 on weekends, especially if children were in the house or if cream was needed for Sunday baking. In 1955, a typical bottle of milk in the United States cost roughly 20 cents to 30 cents. That price reflected not only the product but the entire ritual of early morning delivery, customer service, and community infrastructure. There were printed order cards clipped to screen doors, small notes tucked near the step, and sometimes hand gestures exchanged through windows as deliveries were made. On some routes, drivers used tokens, each stamped with a number of bottles, a practical system for tracking orders quickly in dim light. Milk trucks used insulated compartments, and drivers moved briskly in winter, when breath clouded the air and hands reddened in the cold. During warm seasons, shade and speed mattered, because milk needed to reach its place before sun warmed the glass. Archival records show that by the early 1960s, nearly half of households in the United States still relied on home milk delivery. In Britain, electric milk floats became a recognizable symbol of neighborhood life as dairies expanded post-war capacity. These were not luxuries. They were everyday necessities joined with community trust and skilled labor. To remember this system is to remember a world that built its routines around daily needs, not convenience alone. It was a time when service felt personal, when early mornings held purpose, and when community lines formed not on line but on neighborhood streets, bottle by bottle, day by day. Picture a small brick house on a quiet street. The sun has just brushed the treetops, and the porch boards still hold the cool of night. A pair of glass bottles waits by the door, beads of moisture gathering where the morning air touches chilled glass. Across the street, another bottle glimmers. A soft moment shared by neighbors without a word spoken. Inside, a radio whispers low. A kettle finishes its slow rise to a boil. A mother moves through the kitchen in her housecoat, stirring oatmeal with a wooden spoon. The room smells like toast warming, and the window above the sink frames a lawn touched with dew and pale light. Soon, footsteps pad down the hallway. A boy appears first, hair tousled, rubbing sleep from his eyes. He pulls at the refrigerator door and takes one bottle from the porch box, careful not to let it clink. His fingers curl around the thick neck of the bottle, cool and solid. He lifts the cap with a practiced twist, and a small circle of waxed paper bends at the edge. That first sound, the quiet release of the seal, is a private little ceremony. He watches the cream line settle, that pale richness sitting like a ribbon at the top. Feels like treasure. "Do not spill," his mother murmurs, gentle, not stern. Her voice is warm, as if she, too, values this moment more than she admits. He pours, slow and steady, holding the bottle just right. The thickest cream lands first, then the milk follows in a smooth ribbon. A little splash at the end. He wipes the counter, proud. Childhood often held tasks like this, small responsibilities that felt grown and meaningful. Work that mattered because someone trusted you to do it well. A younger sister appears next, still wrapped in a quilt she dragged from bed. She tucks her feet under the kitchen bench, rubbing her eyes. "Is there enough cream?" she asks, a hopeful whisper. "There is plenty," he replies, trying to sound older. Outside, the truck passes again. A wheel crunches over a bit of gravel. The hum fades. That driver has moved on to the next porch, the next morning ritual, the next family beginning their day with the same bottle and the same routine. Yet not every morning felt perfect. A storm could scatter paper caps, leaving one soggy and bent. In winter, milk might freeze, pushing the cap up in a snowy crown that amused children but annoyed cooks. And sometimes the box would be empty too early, reminding a household that life, even then, was not always perfectly timed. Still, these moments carried comfort. They stitched homes and neighbors together, morning after morning, in a simple, shared rhythm. And soon we will visit a moment when this gentle tradition faced a change that felt larger than anyone expected, shaping both memory and the meaning of morning itself. There comes a point in every gentle routine when the world around it begins to change. For milk delivery, that moment arrived slowly at first. It came in the shape of a new appliance that hummed softly in kitchens. A modern refrigerator, wide and bright inside, promising that milk could last longer than a day or two. Families admired the tidy shelves and the reassuring chill. They noticed how cartons stacked neatly and how weekly grocery trips felt efficient and modern. In the late 1950s and early 1960s, supermarkets spread across suburbs, their fluorescent aisles filled with color and choice. Shoppers pushed wire carts, eyes drifting across rows of packaged goods and shining bottles behind cool glass. The world seemed to be moving toward a rhythm built on cars, parking lots, and wide stores. To many households, it felt exciting, busy, and new. Yet for others, a quiet ache settled in, even if they could not name it. Something that once arrived quietly at dawn now came between errands, lists, and schedules. Milkmen continued their routes, but more porches sat empty in the mornings. Some still placed their small order cards in porch boxes, yet others tucked coins into wallets for the grocery counter. The soft thump of bottles at sunrise began to fade in certain neighborhoods, replaced by car doors shutting and shopping bags rustling later in the day. The change was not abrupt. It was a slow loosening, a gentle unwinding of a thread once woven tightly through morning life. Still, for many, the transition felt more than practical. Touched something emotional. A ritual once shared across communities gave way to individual shopping trips. A familiar face at dawn gradually became a distant memory. It was not simply about milk. It was about rhythm. It was about knowing that someone you trusted stepped quietly to your door each morning, offering sustenance with care and consistency. When that faded, mornings shifted. They felt slightly quicker, slightly louder, slightly less personal. Even so, memory does not vanish with routine. For those who lived it, the sound of a bottle being lifted, the cool feel of glass on fingertips, and the sight of a milk truck easing down the lane remain vivid, tucked safely in the gentle architecture of the past. When older viewers recall this era, they often speak of trust, familiarity, and the way small acts once built community. As we reach this moment in our story, I want to pause and say something from the heart. If these memories bring comfort, if they remind you of a pace that felt kind and thoughtful, I invite you to stay with us and subscribe. It means a great deal to continue traveling through cherished moments together. Because in remembering how mornings once began, we find not only nostalgia but gratitude. We see how ordinary routines carried extraordinary warmth, how service felt personal, and how even a single glass bottle could anchor a day with steadiness and care. Soon, we will look at what remains today and how the spirit of those mornings still lives quietly in the habits we keep and the memories we hold. Memory has a gentle way of guiding us back, not to what we lost, but to what meant the most. When we think of those early hours, when milk waited on doorsteps and the world felt still, we remember more than a delivery. We remember the feeling of beginning each day with care, intention, and trust. Today, mornings look different. Refrigerators hum softly in kitchens, and cardboard cartons sit on shelves in neat rows. Supermarkets open early, and delivery vans bring groceries by the boxful. Yet in quiet corners of life, something familiar remains. The instinct to start the day with warmth. The small rituals that shape a household. The comfort of repetition. A kettle still whistles. Toast still browns. Someone pads softly across the kitchen, careful not to wake others. It may not be a milk bottle waiting outside, but the spirit is the same. A new day arrives, and we greet it with quiet hope. Sometimes, the old rhythm returns in little things. A neighbor leaves fresh bread by a door. A family picks up eggs from a local farm. Someone shares tomatoes from their garden, placing them gently in a brown paper bag. These gestures echo the same truth that guided the milkman's dawn. Community lives in the small acts, the dependable ones, the ones offered without fanfare. Even in modern life, there are mornings when sunlight glows across a countertop and a spoon dips into warm cereal. Children still wake slowly, blankets trailing, asking if there is enough of something they love. Someone still pours with care. Someone still watches a simple breakfast come together. It may be a bit faster, and the world outside may move with greater urgency, but the heart of morning remains rooted in kindness and routine. For older viewers, these memories are not just stories. They are pieces of life held gently, stitched into the rhythm of decades. They remind us that time, however swift, still allows room for tenderness. And they remind younger listeners that progress does not erase meaning. It simply changes how we find it. So what can we keep from those days? We can leave something thoughtful for someone we care about. We can slow our steps at sunrise, even briefly. We can pause before the world grows loud and notice the light, the warmth, and the quiet. We can honor those who worked in silence, making life steadier for others. And we can continue to share stories that affirm how ordinary moments carry extraordinary grace. Because somewhere in the soft memory of chilled glass, in the whisper of a radio at dawn, and in the steady steps of someone doing honest work, we find a truth worth holding. Life felt gentle for a reason. Care was built into the day, and kindness arrived quietly at the door. And perhaps that is why, even now, when morning light spreads across a familiar kitchen table, we can still feel it. That quiet promise, that sense of comfort, that peaceful beginning. I remember that, and maybe you do too.